Hey, so this is a video about what kind of source is this? And that may seem something you may have read the title and went, well, duh, I know what sources are. And maybe you do, and maybe you don't. Because one of the things that happens with citation, and students often struggle with it and like say it's hard, it comes from not knowing what kind of source something is and where to find the actual information to cite it in the source itself. And so for years, I've kind of thought, and other teachers, other English teachers, we're like, okay, we're struggling to teach citation. Students find it hard, but it's really easy. I mean, you just go to the instructions and you read and you follow the instructions. And finally, and we're always trying to, how do we make it easier? How do we make it make more sense? And so finally, I did some research, some, like studies that have been done, research. And what I found is that a lot of times, um, because times have changed and we see so much on the web, people don't realize it's not a website. Okay. So, back in the day, we read real books. This is, by the way, the APA publication manual, the seventh. And if you're going into nursing, something psychology, I advise you buy this. It's not a textbook, it's just a book. So it's about $28, $30. You probably get a used one. This came out a little over a year ago. This is the seventh edition. So the seventh edition is pretty new, but I bet you could find a used one. And, it has all the rules and it talks about style and all of that. So if you find out, later on you're going into a field that uses APA, it's worth having. But anyway, we used to go through books. And so we knew where everything were in books. And when we read magazine articles and newspaper articles, it was the newspaper, it was the magazine. I have this because this is a reference book. Those are the kinds of books. And these books were bought pre Kindle. Right? I have these because of that. I read either on my phone or on my Kindle anymore, unless it's a reference book, this or a cookbook or, some kind of how-to book. So, and most of what we read and most of what you will research on the web. The problem is a lot of things that you're going to find on the web aren't websites. And so learning what those are and also particularly where to find the information you need to cite it, because some of it's stuff that's like not like general stuff. It's like more academic and professional stuff, and that's what this is about learning. That's the trick. So I've designed this particularly for that, and to help you with that. Okay, so let's just get going because, well, otherwise this is going to be kind of lengthy. So, take notes. If you stop, come back to it. Really pay attention to this because this will save you time and grief and effort in the long run, and save me from putting comments on your paper that will help you. And it's my job. I get paid for it. But that way I won't have to think, I said that. No, what's this source video? Okay. So anyway, you're not going to remember everything, but this should get you started. And the more you focus and pay attention, the better off you'll be. So let's move on. All right. So we're going to use the Purdue OWL. And many of you are probably familiar with that. You want to make sure that you are in the seventh edition section, and I have this goes straight to the APA seventh edition section. This is a tiny URL, tiny.cc/owl-apa. So that's quick. You could jot that down. That'll get you there. I'll also put the link to that in the description. I know you can't see me now, but I'm pointing down below. Okay. Now there are 4 sections in here. I suggest that after you do this, or you can even pause now and go read these. These are not lengthy, long pages, and you want to remember when you're reading these, they're giving you the examples. So you're going to read it and then look at the example. Most of these you're going to look up. You use the instructions, you do it. You don't need to memorize it, right? But you want to have, there are certain things like the basics overall, and then the rules about author and authors for both your in-text citation and your reference list that you want to have in mind, because there are sometimes you will need to go and look these things up and they apply to any of your sources. Okay. So for example, with authors, there's, what do you do if you just have one person versus 2 authors, 3 authors, 25 authors? Do you have to put all of their names in? What do you do? The rules are there. What if you have that organization as author? What if, all those different things. So you want to kind of skim through that and be familiar with what those options are so you know, oh, wait, hey, let me go look. I'm doing an in-text citation and I have 7 authors, right? I'm using a source that has 10 authors. Let me see what I need to do. Okay. And otherwise, I mean, whenever you're looking at something and you say, oh, this is a book, go here and click there, and then it'll show you how to cite a book. If you have a video, right, right there. If you had a website, an electronic source, right, periodicals, so a magazine or a journal, um, then you would go there. So this has, and of course there are more things down below too. So this is basically your table of contents for finding that. So again, tiny.cc/owl-apa. All right. So basic steps for once you find a source and you say, yes, I want to use this, and I know on that references page, I've got to cite in my final paper. And when we do the annotated bibliography, that's where you'll be, summarizing what it says, and you'll have the citation at the top of it. So it's kind of a different assignment. But I've got to have that references citation. Therefore, about 5 steps here. First of all, decide what it is. Oh, this is a book. This is a video. This is a, whatever it is. And then look up those citation instructions. So back here, you say, here's what it is, and go look those up. If your source gives you a citation, right, on a website, a database, a number of places will say, here's how to cite this. If they give you APA style, then go ahead and copy and paste that in the document. But don't just say you're done, because I'm going to show you, you'll see, a few slides from now how a lot of those are wrong. And in the end, it's your grade. You can't tell me, well, the library database said to do it that way. I'm going to be like, yeah, and I told you a lot of these things are wrong and you got to fix it. Now, they'll give you a lot of it, so it's good to copy and paste because it gives you the basics, and then you can just fix up the details, okay? Follow the instructions or double check, right? And that's where if you copied it, you're double checking. Format with a hanging indent, put them in alphabetical order, okay? And the hanging indent we talked about in the format for APA papers, so you can always go back to that, or you can just Google hanging indent and learn how to do that, okay? And I'll also put a link to alphabetical order for APA in the description below. All right, there are a few rules that kind of are almost always true. Kind of are almost always, you know how rules are, right? So these are things that on your references page, or like for that annotated bibliography, anytime you're doing that whole big citation with all the information in it, these are the rules in APA that are almost always the way they are, and it just has to do with the first 2 things in your citation. Authors go first. The first thing you're going to have is your author. Now, there are some exceptions, but really 99% of the time, I would bet that you will have your author. And for this paper, I bet 100% of the time. Your author can be a person. So, for example, and we're going to have last name first, followed by any given initials. Kelly Lois Wood in the APA references page would be Wood, comma, KL, and notice the periods. If I didn't tell you my middle name, then it would just be Wood K, okay? If you have an organization, El Paso Community College, don't switch it around. It should just be El Paso Community College, not Community College El Paso or College, comma, El Paso Community. No, just El Paso Community College, okay? So just names get switched around. After you give the name, you're going to give the date. And then you're going to have that right after that in parentheses. So here, Wood, comma, K, period, L, period, or just K, right? Depending on what you have, 2021, comma, July 19. You give as much of the date as you have. So if you just have the year, or if you have the year and the month, or you have the year, month, day. And if you're wondering why July 19th shows up a lot in my presentations, it's because it's my birthday. Yay. And then there's a period, okay? Now, some things won't have a date or an update, a date for the update given. If that's the case, put ND. So that means no date, or you can think of it as telling your teacher, I'm not a dummy, okay? I didn't forget it. Make sure and get it in there, okay? And so if you have a lot of things with no date, you need to rethink those sources because we're working on this college level paper. And so, people that are things that are credible will give the date they're written. And when you don't know, well, do we really want to trust coronavirus information from last year? Maybe, maybe not. But man, I'll tell you what, this is an example, an unusual example of something that has been researched like crazy in a short period of time with probably more people doing research at once on this thing than anything besides maybe I don't know, maybe the Spanish flu, right? But now we're more people, bigger, wider, I don't know. But so yeah, some of it still holds true, but some of it, we've realized we don't have to bring our groceries home and wash everything, right? So yeah, I mean, we didn't know at first and now we know. This is the value of research. So. All right. So there's your basics. Authors go first. You invert those names, but not organizations. Make sure you get that date in. If you don't have it ND, if you have a whole bunch of ND stuff, rethink your sources. Okay, those in-text citations. So these are the ones that when we're writing our paper, we just give that shortcut and then people know to look at the end, our whole list of references for, that citation. So only use last names unless you have more than one author with the same last name. So how to take care of this would be in that section under in-text citations, authors and authors on the Purdue OWL. Okay. If you have an organization as an author, you're going to give the full name the first time, then set up the abbreviation. And basically, they say if it's well known or if it's going to be more than 3 times in your paper. If you're just going to mention something once, you don't need to. Obviously, though, if you're going to like say FBI, you don't want to repeat Federal Bureau of Investigation, you just go FBI. We read that, we recognize that, all those things. And so, of course, whether it's in your sentence or at the end of the sentence or section depends on how you do that citation. And again, I'm going to put a link down below that shows you that. Okay. So you might want to copy those links and like just put them in a file of, my notes for research or handy links for research. Okay. Date. If you put the author's name in your sentence, then boom, that date, just the parentheses right after it. The minute you give somebody's name, boom, those parentheses with the year or ND, okay? And I went over this and I kept saying boom in that APA citation video, how to do it. It's because boom, after you give somebody's name, you need to put that year. Just know if it's in your sentence, according to Wood, boom, 2021, I should always put the date after I give an author's name in my sentences in an APA paper. There we go. There's some exceptions, okay? But I'll help you with those as we go along. And but that's just the rule. So just remember that. It's that easy. If in my sentence I say, according to Wood, Wood says, one researcher, Kelly Wood, or Wood, comma, oh, boom, before that comma, parentheses, year. So author date, author date, author date. They go together wherever they are, whether they're in your sentence or out. Now you just put the date in the parentheses, not if it's your sentence, right? Not the author's name. Just remember, whatever's in the parentheses, you should be able to take out and read your sentence and it should make sense. You don't really read it as part of the sentence. It's just telling us when we're reading it to look at the research, that's just telling us, oh, that's when this research report was written. So as readers, we just kind of make a note of that. If it was 1595, we're like, right? So anyway, okay. So always right after that. If you don't have that date, put that ND. So there's Wood, boom, ND. Okay. Location, location, location almost always goes at the end of your sentence or section. Page and paragraph numbers always go in the parentheses at the end. So you don't say on page 42. No, you just say according to Wood, boom, right? ND, blah, 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 whatever. And then you'd have those parentheses with the P and the period for page 42. Okay. And sections can go either way because you could say, in the introduction section, Kelly or Wood says, Wood, boom, says, right? Or we could say Wood says, blah, blah, blah. And then we would have the paragraph number and the section there. Okay. All right. So let's go with books. Let me just show you. And here's the deal with books. With books, it's not about you can't tell it's a book, right? I mean, you know what books look like. held them since you were in kindergarten at least. But it's where do I find this stuff I need to cite it? So let's take a look at what that is. Now, first of all, books can give you the overview, the big picture. They give you background picture information, a wider context, and a view of the issue in context with more developed examples and discussion. So books are good. Now, you don't have to read the whole book to read it and use it in your research paper. You may find one chapter or one section that's really focused on the specific thing you're looking at and use that. Okay. So don't shy away from books because you're like, oh my God, I have to read the whole thing. You don't have to. Okay. And oh, wait, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. There we go. To cite a book, we need, of course, the author's name. So again, anytime I'm saying author, it might be a person or it might be an organization. Either way. The date it was published, because boom, we got to have that in there, right? The title and the subtitle, if it has one, and the publishing company. Okay. We might have a few other things in books, editors, translators. If you were reading, say, Pablo Neruda, who's a poet, and you're reading who writes in Spanish and you're reading him in English, you want the translator's name too, because, to translate poetry, it's, you're translating the rhythm, the feel, the rhyme, and you got to get the words and make those all work, right, in different languages. So we also put the translator in there, and that way too, oh, this was translated by this person, and maybe there's a different version that people say is better, worse, whatever. The illustrator, if you're going to refer to illustrations, so some of these you would put in no matter what, but like translator definitely. Illustrator really only if you're referring to illustrations, things like that. And those are a little more advanced. We're just doing basic, general college research paper. So let's take a look at this. And generally on the inside, so here's the cover of the book, and we can see there was a picture over there. Generally that first page, the title page, will have the title. Okay, so this is Through the Looking Glass and what Alice found there, the whole thing. Here's the author, by Lewis Carroll. All right. And then, oh, there's an illustrator. See, we already know there's illustrations, right? So if we wanted to cite those, maybe we were going to talk about these. We'd want to make sure and give the illustrator. And then Macmillan and Co., that's for company, right? Short for company. If you see that, then okay, that's the publisher, okay? And then here's the date. You can see this just has a year. And whenever you're looking at an actual factual book, we have Publication Manual of the American Psychological Association. Ooh, it's the official guide to APA style. We have the edition, something we may need too, because if you look at the 6th edition, some of these rules have changed. And if you did the 6th edition, you'll be like, wow, that title page is very different. And then usually, sometimes you can find words right there. This just has the logo for the company, but that is actually, I know this. But if you look, see at the bottom here, here's the American Psychological Association, and it says Washington, D.C. Sorry, I'm such a dork. So anyway, that's the publisher, okay? And sometimes you'll find, you may end up needing to look at like this, I forget what this is called. I think it's on the next page. Yeah, there we go. Um, this is called oh, I didn't even tell you what this is called. I forget what this page is called. I always call it the copyright page. And you may see, it says copyright, whatever. And see, we have lots of different dates here. Um, so which one is this? Well, first of all, we know it was originally published in 1872, okay? But this one, if it was 1954, would it say 1966 on it? No, because, it's going to have, so you always put the most recent date because, they're saying, hey, we published this then and now we're also publishing it again. Okay. So that's where physically you find things in the book. And so again, you want to know these things because whether you have one author or two, whether you, um, that has a lot to do with it. Okay. Duh. Right. So here's our basic format for books. And when you go to the Purdue OWL and you look at that, it's going to have some words above this. Read those and then read the sample and notice how they say author, AA, that's, author, author, just initials, year of publication, because for books, we're generally going to have the year. So if we had more, we'd put it in there. And then the title of the work, capital letters also for subtitle. Notice this is in italics. And notice there's period there. Title of work, this is the title. That colon is for the subtitle. Some works just have a title. Other works have a subtitle. And so this one is just the publication manual of the American Psychological Association. Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, that's just the title. We'll look at something with the subtitle in a little bit. And then the publisher and the name and the DOI if available. And we'll discuss those in a little bit too. So here's the most basic example. Stoneman R, and here's the year, and notice period. Alexander the Great, boom, A Life in Legend. So that one has a subtitle. So we're going to have capital at the first, capital there, the colon there. Okay. None of the rest of this title is in capitals unless there's a, you know, personal name. And Alexander the Great, great is part of the name. And then Yale University Press. Boom, we're done. Okay, because we didn't have this DOI thing. That's it. If you have a book, that's what you cite. Carroll, L, 1872. Now, I would probably put, actually right in here, I believe I really need the edition, okay, or that it maybe should be published in that. So if you're doing something really old, let me know and I'll help you out, okay? Oh, I have a mistake here. The old one said you gave where it was published, and I fixed that later on in this slideshow, but I forgot to fix it here. So if you see that in a citation, remember, you don't need it because all we need is author, year, title, publisher's name, and DOI if available. Author, year, title, publisher's name, Macmillan & Co. That's it, okay? So easy peasy. Remember though, with authors' names, you don't do MD, PhD, whatever their, degrees are, other honorariums. Just first, middle, last, if they've got a couple of middles, couple of lasts, put all of those. If it's a hyphenated name or a 2-word or a 3-word last name like De La Paz, you put De La Paz, comma, Cruz. I was just thinking of somebody I went to school with, right? And then so you'd have C right there. Okay. That's books, okay, in general. Another kind of book is an anthology. And this applies to if you're citing a chapter. Though if you're doing a chapter of a book, you can really just cite the book and not worry about the whole chapter thing. But anthologies, so anthologies are books that have like lots of articles by different people in them, or in a literature book, in high school when you had your literature book and it had, Shakespeare in it and Dickinson and Browning and hopefully, Gary Soto and Louise Gluck and I mean, all these other writers, Amy Tan and things like that. They didn't all write it together, right? I mean, Shakespeare had been dead for a long time. He didn't come from the grave and say, hey, let's put this book together. No, an editor did it. That's the person who gathered up, okay, this source and that source. Let's do this poem and this whatever. And then they did the stuff in between. So, if there's an introduction to Shakespeare or if there were those exercises or discussion questions, whatever, the editors wrote that. So an editor is just someone, when we're talking about publishing like this, is somebody who puts it all together. Okay. So I may decide to write a book about, best practices for teaching citation. And I'm like, I put a call out and tell people, hey, if you've written a good article, you've published research on it, and you want to be published in my book too, let me know, right? And I go out and find ones I like, and I'm like, hey, will you be in my book? And so I'm going to decide how I put them together, what's first, what's last. I'm going to write the introduction, tell you about this author. That's the editor, okay? So I did a lot of work, so I get credit. But we also want to give credit to the writer. So this is an example, and the library has a number of these. And if you find an anthology, you can cite multiple works from it. So it can become multiple sources. If you start citing a whole, like bunches and bunches from it, it will just count as one source. So just cite it as one source, the book itself, not the individual article. Let's look. Okay. All right, so this is what I was just talking about. There's editors. Generally, you'll recognize it by the table of contents, which will list the authors of various works. So this is a book that's in the library, and one of the things that helps us out is it says edited by Anissa and Babbitt, right? Comics as history, comics as literature. And notice this has comics as history, comma, comics as literature, and then roles of the comic book in scholarship, society, and entertainment. This is the title. That's the subtitle. We put a colon here when we cite it or talk about it in our paper. So we have title and subtitle. Okay, let's check it out. So here's how you cite it. You go to the Purdue OWL and article or chapter in an edited book. So this is a book with an editor. We're going to have, if we're just doing citing one article, okay, so let's say we find that book and we're like, oh man, this is a great article I want to use in my paper. Okay, so we're just going to cite that one article. We'd have the authors of the article, who wrote it, the year of publication. Again, it's a book, so we probably only have the year. If we had more, we'd give it. The title of the chapter or the article, and then we got to tell people, hey, what book was it in? And so then we say in EE editor and FF editors, right? So notice here we've inverted last name, first middle initials, last name, first middle initials. Here, first middle initials, last name. It's in regular order. The only ones that get inverted, and again, this is a general rule, so sometimes things may be different. That's why we look up the rules, are the first ones. Okay, so we've said, hey, these are the people that wrote this article. Here's the year it was published. This is the name of the article, and it's in this book. These editors put it together. Tell people they're editors by putting eds. If it was just one, we'd put ed. And then notice italics, title of work, colon, capital letters, okay, also for the subtitle. And then the pages of the chapter or the article, the publisher, so still same thing, what's the company, and DOI if we have it. Okay, so when you give those pages of the chapter essay in parentheses right there, use PP before the numbers, because if you have more than one, so that means pages. Okay, it doesn't appear before the page numbers in periodical references. So we'll get to periodicals in a little bit. Any edition number in the same set. So here is where if there was a second edition, third edition, because when they come up with a new edition, they may have added or taken things out, whatever. Okay. So here we can see Armstrong D 2019, Mallory and Character. So Armstrong wrote this article, Mallory and Character, and we can find it in M.G. Leach and C.J. Rushington's, they're the editor's book, A New Companion to Mallory. And we can go to pages 144 through 163 and go read that. And this is what? The publisher. And there's not a DOI. Again, if it's a print book, you probably won't have one. Okay, so here, title, subtitle, here's our editor. Oh, check that out. Look, Fairleigh Dickinson University Press. A lot of times the publisher will be Press. It'll say that. Not always. Okay. Fairleigh Dickinson University Press. And then here, even here, this is why this page is really good to look at too, because it tells us other things like, oh yeah, she's the editor of this compilation. We know copyright 2014. Okay. So there's all our information, what we need to cite it. But look, here's one of the ways we know it's an anthology, is all of these articles. Here's an article written by these people, right? Or this person. Right? Here's another one written by this person. It's giving the college where they're from. Right? This one, this one, this one. They're all a bunch of different articles. So, and when you go look at it, we see 12, The Zombie Apocalypse, A Fictional State of Nature. So, title, subtitle. And this is by Faiz Sheikh from the University of Leeds. Boom. So we know now we have everything we need to cite. And another thing is often these will have somewhere at the end, it may be before the article starts, at the end of the article, maybe at the first of the book after the table of contents. It's a lot of times it's all the way at the end of the book where they'll have a little, section about each author. And so that's a great place to find your credibility, to find out where these people are from, what have they done. I mean, yeah, this guy is from the University of Leeds, but what else, right? Um, so that's where we can find that out. So when we use them in our paper, the first time we mention them, we want to drop in a little credibility so people know we're citing a good source. So that's, check those out. All right, so here's decision time. Again, are you going to use the whole book? If you're using lots from it, then just cite it as the book. And so you would have the editors first, and then in your paper you would say, according to Chic, and then you'd have this little thing that gives us a cited in, and I'm going to show you that at the end of this presentation, because that's one of those kind of things that you need to know too, and I'll give you a link to it, of course. Okay. But generally, you're going to use one or two, you may use one or two articles in a research paper. You don't want to draw too much from one source, because you want varied research. And so if you're doing that, then you just cite those articles like we looked at before, um, and you're good to go. Okay. I mean, if it's not a book, yeah, so yeah, you're going to cite it, from the book like that. Or you could, no, scratch that, just do this, it's easier. So let's say we want to use this quote from The Zombie Apocalypse, A Fictional State of Nature by Faiz Sheikh. According to Sheikh, boom, there's that date. The assumptions around human nature and the state of nature can be analyzed in the context of The Walking Dead. Now, remember, in the paper, I follow the regular rules of treating titles. If it's an article, I put it in a quote marks, right? If it is the title of a whole book, a big thing, the whole TV series is The Walking Dead. One episode would be that title would go in quotes because it's one episode of the whole TV series. Okay. So whole TV series, italics, whole books, you're going to read the whole book, italics, just the article. It's that one chapter, quote marks. Okay. Um, but remember, the references page is different. On the references page, APA is wild and free and they do whatever. This is again why even I look up the instructions. Okay. All right. So what would we look for on the references page? And here's where, like we're saying, according to Shake, but this is one article. We're not citing this one article on that references page, right? So we've got to cite the book, okay? So that's where we're going to have, here's our sample from the Purdue OWL. So Shake F, boom, 2014, The Zombie Apocalypse, A Fictional State of Nature, in A.A. Babick, editor. Comics is history, comics is literature. There's my colon because we've got title, semi-title. Roles of the comic book in scholarship, society, and entertainment. Here's the pages if you want to go check that out in the library, pages 195 through 207. And again, oh, what did I mess up on? I still have leftover from the 6th edition where it was published, but no, that was too much work. Don't do that. Just the company, right? Cool. So I got this off of the library, the search database there. I don't need the URL or anything like that because we're going to have page numbers. So we're going to look at some eBooks in a little bit. But this is if you have a book that has articles by a bunch of people, this is how you do it. Okay. So let's look at the eBooks. Really, APA says use the same formats for both print books and eBooks. For EMAT, the format, platform, or device is not included in the reference. Okay. And so when you look up in-text citations, they're going to have some information for ebooks. If you don't find it on the Purdue OWL, the first place I always go to is the APA style blog. And so I just type in APA blog, how to do ebooks in text. Like really, like, just natural, and it'll get you there, right? If you don't find that there or some other reliable source, let me know. Okay. And also remember, librarians are your best reliable source. Like they know how to do this stuff. Okay. So we've got Collaborate. You can call and talk to them. So if you're not on campus or you can't get there, you can call and talk to them. You can send them an email, like if you're working, graveyards and you sleep during the day and you're like, I'm too tired, I can't talk to a librarian now, and they're not up at midnight. Guess what? Send them an email and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. Like that's part of like their knowledge base, what they do. Okay. All right, so same thing. So that's nice. But the key thing is when you search on the college database, you got to figure out where is this information. So again, it's not always about I don't know what this is. You may know this is a book, but where do you find all that stuff you need to find? So here, obviously, this is pretty easy because it gives you authors. So this is Soccer Empire, the World Cup and the Future of France, right? So we'll need this, okay? Um, and then the author is Laurent Dubois. So we've got Dubois L, right? It was in Berkeley. We don't need that anymore, but University of California Press in 2010. Dude, score. That's everything we need to cite a book. Books are the easiest thing to cite. Okay, you don't want to overdo them because they're not going to be quite as up to date. It takes longer to publish a book, um, but they are the easiest thing to cite because they've been around for so long. Okay. So anyway, let's go, click on this or, oh, before we do that, hold on, wait, look over here. It says cite over on your right-hand side at the library. When you do the library search, it will say cite, and you can, of course, cite and get the citation. Now, notice all this extra stuff that we don't need. Yeah, and we got to get rid of the Berkeley too, right? So it's pretty close, and you can remember it right now, and I can remember it right now. But 20 minutes from now, when I go cook that chicken I got thawing out in the kitchen, I'm not going to remember it. I'm going to look it up, especially because the seventh edition is pretty new, and I'm still going to want to put the city where it was published in there, and I'm going to remember don't do that now. Okay. So again, don't try to memorize it. Don't fake your way through it. It's just APA psychologists made this shit up. Okay. You could have to read their minds. And even if you're going to become one, then you'll be even more skeptical about wanting to read their minds. Okay. Just look it up. All right. Okay, so there's site too, there are a number of places you can find it. Just make sure you're getting the right one. So it would be worth it for us to copy and paste this. We want to make sure we fix the font so it matches with um, our paper itself. We want to make sure that we, keep the parts that are italics, parts that aren't. Then we could get rid of this, get rid of that. We're really golden. Okay. So just like this, Dubois L, Soccer Empire. Oh, we don't need ebook. Some of them, I don't think that one said ebook, but some of them do. This is one I copied from somewhere else where it said to put ebook in there. Nope, just the colon, World Cup and the Future of France, University of California Press. So that one's a pretty much a score with you know, the copy and paste site as long as you remember they're not always correct. Okay. Now the other thing you can do, and this is from, if we go back here to the search down here on this side, remember we've got all these different things over here. So this is the table of contents over there. Okay. And when you click on that, you'll get the table of contents at the bottom. And so before you start citing or say, I'm going to use this, take a look at that and then, see if there's anything in there you think you might be interested in, or at least read the introduction. Like this is kind of vague. Maybe it would fit into your paper on something about soccer, or maybe it wouldn't. Read it and see, give it a skim, see if it applies, right? Remember also, though, under that is find similar results, where if you do decide, wow, this is right on what I want, whether it's a book, article, whatever, click on that and give it a try. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll do almost all of your research for you. And again, when they first put that up, at first I was like, oh, well, that's just too easy. And then I'm like, duh, computers are way easier than the way we used to look things up without computers, and I love computers. This is a cool thing that is helpful. I love this. So once you find an article or book that like is spot on with what you want to research, click on that. Sometimes it doesn't work at all, but sometimes It will do almost all your research you need. You need 6 sources. That's it. That's all you need for this. You're finding 6 sources, 6 good college level sources, okay? And we'll look at that in a little bit too. All right. So when we go to that, so I went to chapter 8, an unfinished war, because it sounded cool. Okay. Um, so it comes up like this, and here we see 177. And you can say, oh, that's the page. And it may mesh with the books page, but always scroll down and look here at the bottom of the page. And this is just a PDF. So, I'm scrolling, you can scroll down to read it, right? Or click over, it'll give you the next page there. But when you do that, just make sure when you cite, like you want to use this quote right here, there are fences in many stadiums to make it impossible for fans to jump on the fields, but those can be dangerous. But we want to give that and put P177 in our parentheses after it. Just make sure you're actually doing that. And remember, sometimes page numbers are at the top of pages in books and sometimes they're at the bottom. So just like even though this is digital and online, you've got to still look around, okay? Oh, that's not the one I wanted to push though. So, okay, so here we go. According to Dubois, 2010, boom. FIFA was originally composed entirely of European countries, but by 1914, Argentina, Chile, and the United States and South Africa had joined. And there we go. We finished the quote, and then boom, P period. There's our page number 23, boom, period at the end, okay? Remember, this does not go in the quote. Those quote marks mean that's exactly what was in the book. And page 23 wasn't like at the end of that sentence, it was down at the bottom, right? It's page number, okay? It's not the text, okay? So never again, remember, never put according to Dubois 2010 and the page number here or on page 23. That always goes at the end, okay? And we can do it a different way too. If you just want to give that fact and you're not going to put his name in the sentence, we could say FIFA was originally composed entirely of European countries, but by 1914, Argentina, Chile, and the United States and South Africa had joined. Then, boom, author, date, location. We can put them all at the end, and we end the quote and then put the period. Okay, cool beans, easy peasy. All right. Oh wait, oh, here we can also put the year. So we wouldn't put the page number or any other numbers like that, but we could put the year. In 2010, Dubois noted, that's date author, but it's still author date. They're right there together, right? Noted that. And then of course there's our location. So, we want all three parts for that in-text citation, and then we have the other stuff. All right, so journals. So journals are just professional magazines, professional academics. So, you go to the store, grocery store, and you see all the magazines. You can read magazines online. Magazines are just for all of us, right? Journals are more for people in the profession. When I did my research on what is it that makes it hard for students to cite, they were all like an English journal, community college journal. I mean, journals that are about writing, about, Englishy stuff, about anywhere, college, university, that kind of thing. And they're really made for teachers, people that are, doing that kind of job. So what we're looking for, and I mean, that is one of the key things. I do say you have to have at least 3 journal articles. Now that's when I'm making this video. I may have changed the assignment and that may be incomplete. So make sure that you've read the assignment. Okay. All right. All right. So let's see what we need. And you can tell journals, like if you're in the library, like they're generally more boring looking. And a lot of times they will have the word journal, the Pakistan Journal of Applied Economics, right? This one's called a bulletin. This one, Journal of Political Economy. So, sometimes they have a more interesting name, but a lot of times they have journal in it. Now, what do they give us? They give us more focused research on a specific aspect of a topic and more timely information. All this research that's come out about COVID, if it's been published, like published, not just put on the web pre-publication, a preprint, um, it's journals, right? I mean, these scientists, these doctors, they're writing up their findings and they're putting it in journals because that's where you officially put stuff. Okay. And then other people can come along and say, well, we did the same study and it didn't work, or we did this study and we found this too, right? Yeah, it backs up what those scientists found, right? Because science should be repeatable, right? If you get a study that's only been done once, and especially if it's a small group of people, you're like, maybe. Okay, this was true for us, for 10 people, and for 1 week, we'll see if it's true for other people. Okay. Um, that's where, journals are going to have the most up to date because, well, really a lot of websites are, but journals on websites. And you want to distinguish between the preprint and the publication. So the preprint means that the journal's accepted it. So let's say I run a journal, the Journal of Kelly's Smart Students. Okay. And you do this study and you find out something and you submit it to me, say, hey, I'd like to have this published in your journal. And so I go through it. I'll probably send out some other people who are in that field. They'll read it, make sure the science is good, the numbers make sense, whatever it is. And then I'll say, hey, guess what? I like that. We all agree it's good stuff. We're going to put it in the journal. We may sometimes like publish it on our website as a preprint and say, this is going to be in the next edition. Right? And especially like in these COVID times, as I like to call them, that's happened a lot because really we're in kind of emergency situation with our knowledge of this virus developing. I mean, over the last year and a half, it's gone from we didn't even know this was out there. And okay, we knew about coronaviruses because they're colds, but nobody really, did a lot of research because there wasn't a lot of money in it because people were like common cold, whatever. Um, to wow, what we know now, and what we will know in the future because it's so big. And they're doing preprints because we really are, in many ways, in a state of emergency with that. Now, should we trust them? Well, it depends. Is there other research to back it up? Is there a substantial body? I mean, is it 10 people we studied, or is it 1,000? There's a difference between those two numbers, quite a bit. Just ask your pocketbook and your bank, right? So there you may find stuff that isn't totally printed, like official yet. And if so, you want to make sure to say in a preprint article. And that way when your readers read it, they know, okay, this has been accepted for publication in this journal, but it's kind of not out there officially. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like when the president's elected, they're the president, but not officially until they're inaugurated. There we go. You get a job, you're going to be a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, a social worker, a psychologist, of whatever. But you have that job, but you're not that thing until you get that job, right? So, okay, enough of that. All right, so, and then of course more timely because there's just a faster publication, especially with online journals, okay? All right, so what do we need? We need, again, the author's name, the date of publication, title and subtitle, if it's got one of those, the name of the journal, the volume and issue, and sometimes it's called issue number, okay, and the page numbers it appears on. We may also need the URL and the DOI, and this is where this comes in. That DOI is that document object identifier, and it's used a lot on journals. We'll find it in a few other places, but it's used a lot in journal articles. And it's just basically, it's kind of like there's registry, kind of like for websites, right? There's a, um, I just spaced, I forgot what it's called, but there's a body that governs domains, right? And then so that they make sure, I bought kelli.ninja and they make sure nobody else buys that. And if you go to kelli.ninja, you get kelli.ninja, not, somebody else.ninja, right? So that's that document identifiers. It gives each article that, and people have to apply for it, just like if you want a website you got to go buy the domain, um which a lot of them are really cheap, just so you know. Okay. But So anyway, with the DOI, you register and say, hey, I wrote this article, or the editor of the journal may do it for each individual article. I don't know how it works. But anyway, you get that assigned to you, and it's like, hey, anytime if you have a DOI, you can put it in the web, you can, go to a librarian, and that's a unique identifier. So even if there's another Kelly Wood out there who wrote an article with the same title as mine, we would have different DOIs because they're different articles. Okay. All right. Here we go. So library search page again. And remember, we want EPCC to have it, because if you're going to search there's no, you can, if you find something where you just have the citation, again, like I said in the research um, thing, then you know, you can ask a librarian and they can help you find it, but generally it's just easier to say EPC has it, scholarly journals, and then limit your time, right? So like now this is going to say 2021 and, you know, probably 2010, 2015, last 5, 10 years, depending on what you're researching. Obviously, if you're looking for some historical stuff, you can have it older than that. If you're going to talk about coronavirus and then you're going to talk about the plague, then you might want something that's written by somebody who was there in 15, 16, 17. I don't know when that happened. Okay. All right. So let's go. I did a search for heavy metal, right? This is what this one's for. And I found this article, Heavy Metal Music and the Communal Experience. So this is what that looks like when you go and search on the library. It will bring that up. One, this tells me it's an academic journal. So cool. That helps, right? Here's the author by Sewer Daniel. It's in Metal Music Studies, that's the name of the journal. And then this gives us the date and other publication information. So September 2017, we've got volume 3, issue 3. Again, remember, sometimes it's issue number, or sometimes people just put number or NO. They'll put vol and NO. So it starts on page 465. This tells us it's 5 pages. It's a whole lot of stuff we don't need there, but this is the stuff you do need. Now notice this says book reviews because I was like, cool title, Heavy Metal Music and the Communal Experience. Excellent. But remember, we're not using book reviews because that's just somebody who read the book and said, hey, let me tell you why you should read this or not. Okay. No, I may find that book and then I can go look for that book, you know, check out the book review and say, wow, I really want to use this book and find that book. And if I couldn't find it, I'd ask a librarian because that's their job, right? And their specialty. So because we can't use this, this is on the no list of sources to use. So I'm going to go and find another one. So here's a new one, another one, Old Sounds with New Technologies, examining the creative potential of guitar profiling technology and the future of metal music from the producer's perspective. All right, this is by Herbst Jean-Peter, right, in Metal Music Studies. March 29, Volume 5, Issue 1, starts on page 53. I'm going to give the whole page numbers in my citation. And here, I'm going to click here to get the article. Sometimes it'll just say PDF, and you can click on that. If you just click on the name, you know, it'll take you to that. With this one, the Academic One file, it'll probably say View Record from Academic One file, and you have to click there. Okay. Now, when we get here, if you scroll down on this page, this is just HTML. It's not the PDF. So we don't have page numbers. Section numbers and counting paragraph numbers sucks the big one. Okay. I'm sorry if your kids were around. You should have told them, don't listen to my English teacher. She does not speak well. Just really, it does. So get the PDF. And 99% of the time you can get the PDF, you may see this icon, that one, that one, that one. You may see this one, or you may just see one that says download PDF here, right? You may see this one. Click here, and what we'll get is that will open up the PDF. Notice here, though, again, what you have to do is you have to look for the stuff that you need to cite. Here's a DOI. And so that looks like a website, but it's actually a DOI. It takes you to a website that tells you what the title of this is, who wrote it, all that stuff. Here's the DOI, so I'd want to copy and paste that. Okay, it's also going to be here. Because see, here's where I downloaded it. So now we can see this looks just like a PDF. Here's Music Metal Studies, Volume 5, Number 1. If I see these, I generally know it's a journal. Okay, if I'm not sure, I'm going to go to the internet and I'm going to type in what is, and I'm going to put it in quotes, Music Metal Studies, quotes, and I may put publication, because like our metal music studies, because I'm sure that somewhere there's a university or two where you can get a degree in metal music studies. Okay, so I could put publication, that kind of thing, and the internet will tell me this is a journal, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's the author, and look, there's where Jan Peter, I would bet, works. Okay, and when I look, and so that gives me everything I need. because I have a PDF, right? Because I made sure and clicked on the PDF and downloaded it, and that PDF is just exactly as if I were holding a copy in my hands or made a copy. I'm going to have all the page numbers. So I can cite it just like a print journal. And that is the second easiest thing to cite because APA is all about college advanced studies. And so really they prefer that as you move into psychology. They want the latest information, right? Into nursing, you're going to want to get stuff from journals. You may be using some books, some websites here and there, but APA, if you're in a field that uses it a lot, they really prioritize journals. Um, and of course, you can have journals on the web too, right? They don't all have to have been printed at some point. Okay, but check out how easy this is. There's the author. Here's that last name, first name, date, boom. Okay. With a journal, we might have more than just the year. The Eclipse of Listening, that's the title of the article itself. It's in the journal, the new criterion, and then this is volume and this is issue. So if I just had volume, I would only give this. If I just had the issue or the issue number, I would only give that. If I have both, I put both. Notice commas, right? And those are the pages it's on. Notice there's no P there, okay? Or no PP, all right? Um, Again, earlier, we saw that we were supposed to put the P or the PP, right? APA, look it up. Okay, like I said in the citation video, and don't get mad at it. That's a waste of your time. They don't care. Okay. So if you're using a copy that's online but it's PDF, you can just cite it as print. Much easier. Okay. Now if we had the DOI like we did with the metal one, we'd pop that in at the end. Okay. So anytime you have that DOI for a print source, online, whatever, put that in. Okay. So an electronic journal includes the DOI. So here we go, authors, date. Here's the title of our article. Notice it's not in italics here. Journal of Service Learning and International Engagement in italics. Volume, issue number, pages, and there's our DOI, just like that. Okay. If you are using an online or electronic journal and they don't have the DOI, then you just do the URL, okay, just from your browser's address bar. So same thing here, this just uses the URL. But remember, they prefer the DOI. So, all right, so here's what I got from the that source off the library, and there's a cite thing. All with it, it was almost exactly correct. I just got rid of the 53 plus, and I had to look and see what pages. It goes from 53 to 69. And then I got rid of this retrieved from because it had that and just put in the DOI. Again, it's worth it to look and see if they offer a citation for you. Just double check, okay? Because you can copy and paste and then just fix the things, all right? And there we go. That's what it should look like altogether. So we just looked at that. All right, websites, professional and organizational websites. Now, obviously with the web, you have to be careful. Remember, and double check this because again, I might have updated the assignment and forgotten to redo this video. So many videos, so little time. But at the making of this video, which is in the spring of 2021, and this has been true for many semesters, so it's likely to be true in the future, you have to have 6 college level sources, the minimum of, you may have more, and you may have some other sources that aren't necessarily college level or that are, to add to that. You may have a source or two that is not necessarily college level source, but it's like a primary source. For example, in the sample that Rudy wrote, the Dying to Be Beautiful one, where she used the Lily Allen song and the Shades of Grey book as examples of, what was going on there. So, but she still had at least 3 journal articles. Okay. And that's what you want to make sure you have, at least that. And then you can have 3 more, that's your minimum 6. And if you want to have more than that, you're golden. Okay. So, professional journal articles or professional publications. Okay. So they don't have to be print. They might be on the web, whatever. You're going to find them through the databases generally. That's the easiest way. Any websites must be professional organizations, governmental departments or agencies, or non-profit organizations that carry on research in the area. So it might be a university, it might be if you're doing some medical thing, it might be Johns Hopkins or, I mean, university of somewhere or something like that. But they need to be professional organizations, okay? Not just like somebody's website, okay? If it is just somebody's website, they better clearly have their expertise why they're there, and go back and review that reading reading and using scholarly articles, because I talk about there, like, don't use Psychology Today. That's mainstream. That's a magazine for all of us. Now they may mention articles that we could go look up, right? Wikipedia, same thing. We don't use an encyclopedia. That's just general knowledge. We're going to look up the more specific, higher level stuff. Okay. So make sure all sources should have a scholarly focus, with the exception of like history, background, primary sources, things like that. Okay. So what do websites provide? Of course, very current information, and then primary sources too. Original documents, tables, raw data. You may find that you just need some statistics on something. And so that may or may not fall in your six, but you go find, say, census statistics or, statistics from somewhere. And of course, it's not just website. It might be a magazine, a journal, a blog, professional organizational website. If you're not sure, this is where you do that. Ask the internet. What is, boom, give the name of the website and see what it says. Like if it says it's a newspaper, it's an online magazine, then oh, you know what? I need to cite this as a magazine or a newspaper that's online. And that's where you go look at those electronic sources on the Purdue OWL, and it'll have that. What if it's just a website? What if it's a, you know, uh, um, a magazine, a journal, whatever it is, it'll say, here's how you cite it as on the web. Okay. So there we go. Blogs and personal websites are really pretty much off the table. Okay. If you find one that you think, wow, yeah, I think this is college level or it's a good example, email me, let me know, send me the link, and I'll take a look at it. Okay. All right, so those electronic sources, here we go. If you have just a general thing from a website, so this is not a journal article, it's not a magazine, newspaper, just general website stuff. Last name, first initial, middle initial, year, month, date, depending on how much you have, the title of the page, not the site, right? So the specific page, reference list, electronic sources. Site name would be Purdue OWL, and then we give the URL, right? Title of page, English 1302 research, site name kelli.ninja, kelli.ninja/research. Okay, so there we go, and you can see how that is. If it was written by that group or organization, use the name of the group or organization as the author. So, for example, if we have, what to do about coronavirus, and it's written by this, maybe we have an author, and then it's on the CDC, the Center for Disease Control page, we would have Center for Disease Control here, and then the URL. If we don't have an author's name, and so we're going to say this is written by the Center for Disease Control, then we would have that twice, okay? And I'm going to double check that. I'll put a note in the description if that's not the truth, okay? Oh, no, it's not. Additionally, if the author and site name are the same, omit the site name. So if we had CDC, year, month, date, what to do about coronavirus, then we just have the URL, okay? So put the website unless you really already put, or the organization unless you already put it there, okay? All right, so what do we need? Author's name, date of publication, the article or page title, subtitle, the website name or the organization, and the URL, so the web address. Easy peasy. Now, where do we find all of that? Well, obviously, up there at the top in your browser where it says HTTPS, kelli.ninja or whatever. Oh, look, here it is on the bottom, right? Here's the website for that. So that's easy. We right click, copy it. Now, this is a web page by the ASA. Now, we're really not going to say ASA. We know this stands for something. And so actually as our author and even as our publisher, we've got to find out who it is so we can click there. And we'll look at that in a minute. Notice this is our title. So this is really called a masthead. This is kind of, at the top of the page where you have the basic, whoever it is and the different kind of tabs here. That's comes from newspapering, a masthead. And this is the title of the article or page, Stability and Change in America's Perception of Freedom, right? So this is the article. Here is August 1, 2019. There's our date. And look, we have Orlando Patterson and Ethan Foss. Right, there we go. So that's what we've got here. So now we have the authors, right? We have the date. We have the name of the article. We have the organization that published it, but we're going to have to figure out what ASA stands for. And then we have the URL. So we click on About ASA, and then we find out, look, it's the American Sociological Association. So there we go. We're going to use that for our references. Here's another one. So I said this is generally the masthead, but Design Impacts Lives is not the name of the organization that put it up. This is ASID, the American Society of Interior Designers. Okay, so we may have done a search and we find an article, and there we go. There it is. And you can always click on the About. Sometimes you go to the bottom and find that. This is an interesting example because this source that I found, it might be a little confusing to cite. So um, the link at the bottom in yellow is a report we might want. So there's this, let's say we wanted this report, okay? Outcome of Design Awards. Download the case brief. So this is telling us about that, okay? We could go download that. And this is what it looks like. It downloads a PDF. So cool. We're going to have page numbers. We don't have to count paragraphs or put in paragraphs and section headings. Yay, life is good. Okay. We know that we got it from the American Society of Interior Designers. Impact of Design Series Volume 6. There's some more information we might need. This is called Lassonde Studios. Okay. So when I go to APA Publication Manual and say, what do I do if I have a volume? All right. Well, this shows me, look, this is kind of the same thing. This Handbook of Social Psychology, and it's a 5th edition. If I had an edition, I'd put that there. If I have a volume, put that there. And then John Wiley and Sons is the publisher. And there's that DOI, right? Here's another example, authors, date. Oh, these are editors, okay. Handbook of the Psychology of Women, Volume 1, History, Theory, and Battlegrounds. Oh, there's that publisher, American Psychological Association, and here, DOI. Okay, so what's the difference here? If the volume doesn't have its own title, then you include that in the parentheses after the italics. So here, right, it wasn't like with that one, notice it's called Lassonde Studios. That's the title of it. Okay, so right, I have a title. If it does have a title, include it and the volume number and title after the main title. So Lassonde Studios, and then I would put volume whatever, right? 6, Impact of Design Series. Aha. Right? So a lot of this is read it, and that's why you got to try it. I mean, you can ask me how to do it, and I'll send you links, or right now I'm showing you these. You go to the OWL and you do it. And it may be confusing, and that's okay. Put it down because my job's to help you. You're going to put it down, and I'll say, yeah, you got it right, or just smiley faces, or I'll say, no, that's not right. Here, look at this, and don't forget those parentheses, or put this part in italics and this part not, or, oh, you probably didn't know about this. You got to get this into. Okay, but until you write it down, I can't tell you right or wrong. So just try it, and if you feel awkward and weird, that's okay. We all do whenever we're not sure about this stuff. Okay, so you're in the right place. Okay, so authors, our basic website, author, date of publication, article, page title, website name, URL. So here we know we've got to get those things in. But who is the author was the thing. And this says, so we're reading this case brief. And so this is where reading the web page carefully for your citation information becomes important. Case brief by Canon Design and this EDA. Well, who are these people? Well, at the very end, page 10 of 10, this is that thing I downloaded. It says, and notice Canon Design is one word. Notice they capitalize the C, capitalize the D, just like iPhone does the I small, iTunes. So we're going to respect their capitalization for their name, okay? and this is EDA Architects, so EDA. So those are our authors there, right? So we're going to have Canon Design and EDA Architects. Boom, there's the year. Impact of Design Series, comma, Volume 6, Lassinade Studios. American Society of Interior Designers. And then we don't have a DOI. We're going to put that URL in there, that web address. And when you put this in here, don't enter. You know, the new APA says don't enter. So you may end up with like some big gaps in there. I hate it, but hey, their rules are their rules. It will usually, your word processor will usually return if you have the slash or a hyphen, something like that. Okay. So, and you can see I compared it to the APA book sample there. Okay, so that's how I did it. Like this one, like right before I did this video, since I had to update it from APA 6, like I went and looked that up, and the way I did it was I pasted that in there. So I looked at the sample, right? And I didn't have the Purdue guide, but I had this, but same thing. I would look at the Purdue guide and then I would type mine up the same, or if I've copied and pasted, fix it to make it look, that's actually literally how you do citation. Okay. All right, and let's see a few more things. Oh, this means we're at the end. Okay, so that covers books, anthologies, websites, journals. Those are really the main things you're going to use. As you go further, you may use more specific things. You'll get better at this, and then you'll know how to find that. And you always know, I mean, do what I do. If you're not sure, ask the internet, or more importantly, ask a librarian, because even if they don't know it, they can find out their job, their degree. They are masters and certified masters of finding stuff. Okay? They probably don't know where your keys are, but information, yeah, if it can be found, a librarian should be able to find it. Okay, so here are, I think, two more tips kind of things you may need to know for citation. One is indirect sources. So if you have a source that, say, let's say I interviewed Aquafina. I hear there's some controversy about her right now. So anyway, or I read some article, okay, and I love Aquafina. Right? First of all, I would look up her actual name, not her stage name, to probably use in my formal paper. But let's say I interviewed her and I wrote an article, and you want to cite my article, but you're going to use a quote from her. That's an indirect source, because you're going to say, you know, in Wood's article, Wood boom article, you know, Aquafina says, and then you give that quote, whatever it is. So, but there's a certain way you do the in text different, and so that it refers to my, even though you're quoting her ideas, that people know on the references page to look for my article. Okay, and you'll find that in that in text author section. Okay, so make sure you slow down and read those very carefully. They're really short, right? So read the paragraph above it. Okay, you should endeavor to have those primary sources, but sometimes you can't, right? So if Aquafina only said that to me and I wrote the article, there we go. But here's Johnson argued that, so we could say Aquafina argued that. And then so people would know on the references page, it's not in Johnson, it's not in Aquafina, as cited in Smith, as cited in Wood. Look, author, date, location, right? If you just gave the quote according to Aquafina, boom, 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 then we'd have Wood 2021. Oh, wait, Aquafina 2021 as cited in Wood 2021, page, paragraph, section, you know, whatever you're using for that location. Okay, and go back to the APA citation video, the basics for that. Okay, so you don't need to memorize all that. I'm just showing you. Okay, in the end, when you look at sources, you need to learn how to identify what type they are, and then of course be able to find that stuff you need to cite them. So we've gone over that, like looked at places, where do you find the article, where did the author, the publication information, the title versus the subtitle, that volume issue thing, those page numbers, you know, where are those in the actual physical book? Where are they? Oh, here's, like, my sister sent me this book last semester. Don't forget to sing in the lifeboats. And the first thing I opened it up to was this quote. So if I wanted to use this quote, oh wait, I can't even find it. The first thing I opened up to. That's really interesting. But there's a lot of quotes from different people, so you know this would probably be one of those as cited in kind of thing. The pain passes, but the beauty remains. That's nice. Okay, but we know where to find. Look, Catherine and Ross Petrus. Now we know they didn't write all of this because that was, I forget who that was. There was an Oscar Wilde quote above it. They're the editors, right? We know publication information is going to be there. We know look top, bottom for page numbers, all of those kinds of things. And that's what you want to keep in mind is learn how to read for this information. And so I hope this has helped you kind of figure out what this information is. Don't trust citations that are given to you, right? Use them as the basics, but look up how to cite, okay? Um, so I know this has been lengthy. Thank you for sticking in there. I really believe if you've, you know, stopped, slowed down, taken notes, been thoughtful, this will help you come back to it when you need to. Um, you know, check out the links below and of course ask me questions whenever you have them. And remember, ask those librarians questions too. Okay, I'll try to make sure and put the link to the library webpage, which you should have that already, but I'm going to put it below. I will put it below again because you'll find, be able to find their number and either go in and talk to them. I mean, they're wonderful people. They'll help you more than anything with your research. They really will. And so, about finding stuff, about citation, things like that, talk to them, ask me, use your resources, ask the internet. That's part of being professional too. Two things is always asking for help, right? And we've got the Purdue OWL, we've got so many good sites for that, the APA blog, but we also have good people too. So use those sources too. Always ask for help. Professionals do that. Okay. All right. So again, thank you for sticking in here. Let me know if we have if you have questions. Take care of yourself, and of course, as always, what are you going to do? You're going to keep on keeping on.